Greetings, campers, and welcome to the latest in our TELUS webinar series. This one is called Zooming on Zoom. I'm Scott Walker, the Executive Director of the Canadian Artists Network, and it's a pleasure to welcome artists from right across Canada today. Speaking of which, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we all live, work, and create on the traditional territories of many Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land, now called Canada, since time immemorial. We acknowledge this as part of our covenant with all Indigenous nations to share, respect, and protect the land in the spirit of peace and friendship, and to honor the future generations of all our nations. It's kind of appropriate that we're holding this webinar on Zoom today because that's the topic of the webinar. I mean, 5 years ago, I don't think most of us had even heard of this platform. Now it's ubiquitous. We certainly wouldn't be able to carry on the Canadian Artists Network programs without it, but many of us are still pressing the join button and hoping for the best, crossing your fingers, which is never a safe solution with technology. It's better to know as much as possible. There are things we can do to improve the connection and the Zoom experience, and we're going to find out about some of those today. Our special guest is no stranger to most of you. She's a member of our community, artist and digital art service provider, really a left and right brain person. Please welcome Leah Murray.
Thank you, Scott. Some of this is fairly technical. We're going to do the hard parts first and get them out of the way. And once we've got those out of the way, then we'll get into the fun stuff. So we're talking about Zooming on Zoom. And as much as it's been around for 5 years, it actually had quite a rough start because it was running for a year and 2 months, and suddenly we had a pandemic, and Zoom came out the clear front runner at that time for this kind of application. And they were actually a small startup at the time. So they scrambled something awful just to get caught up with their market, which suddenly went from, one or two countries all the way up to worldwide almost overnight. It took about 3 months for it to become something that was on everybody's lips. 5 years later, they have developed the platform absolutely wonderfully and amazingly and made life lots easier for all of us. And in the process, managed to take on the giants like Google and Microsoft in this area, and a little bit on Apple, and actually competed on a level playing field with those big guys, even though they were still a small and growing company. So fairly impressive. I like Zoom. It's my platform of choice for doing everything. So what we're going to do today is we're going to cover in this next hour the basic Zoom etiquette, which probably most of you already know, but it doesn't hurt to touch base. The scary stuff on the tech, which is how the connections actually work, what causes interference and impediments, and what the easy fixes are. And then the non-scary stuff, which is the how to use the platform part, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. Scott and Cody, please keep track of me because I get talking about this stuff and I get off in the weeds. So somebody pull the reins if I get going, okay? Thanks. So Zoom etiquette. So we have Zoom etiquette involves two things: pre-session etiquette and in-session etiquette. Okay, and the pre-session etiquette will solve you lots of problems if you just go over your computer and turn off or shut down any of the items on that are running in the background, programs and things that you're not actually going to use during the Zoom session. I've had the uncomfortable experience myself of having one of my Google web pages open up that was buried in I don't know, 15 windows down or something, and it started playing, and I was like, oh no. And of course, it took me a few minutes to find it and shut it off. So since then, I've actually shut everything off except what I'm using on the desktop, which probably terrifies my computers quite a bit. They're not used to that at all. Second is to get in a quiet enough place to be able to concentrate and get away from your regular household or environmental activities. My job around that today was interesting because yesterday a construction project started in our backyard that I had no idea was coming. So I had to go and negotiate with the construction crew to actually not pour concrete from now until a couple of hours from now, just to be safe. They were actually great about it, thank goodness, but otherwise there would have been a concrete mixer going right outside my office window. In your pre-session, if things are very noisy in your office, it's quite acceptable now to get your smartphone and go sit in your car or go in a corner of a very quiet coffee shop or whatever, just to get away from the noise and focus on what you're doing. That's not really an etiquette thing. It's more like a comfort thing, but it will also serve you well in terms of keeping your audience focused on what they're doing. In session, some of the things that we're going to do today are going to involve these. They are the muting of yourself and your environment if you're not the speaker or presenter. Sometimes your host will mute everybody. Most of the time, if you're in a webinar like this one, the host has control of all that and will shut off all of the voices except theirs and the presenters. If you have your video running in the background, you might want to turn that off too, because that, as you will find out in a few minutes, actually will cause you problems in Zoom or in any kind of heavy duty transmission that involves both sound and images. Also, it will provide much less distraction for you while you're looking at slides and whatnot, and it takes up a lot less screen real estate for you. If you have a background around you, you may want to change it to suit the occasion. I keep about 5 different backgrounds in my Zoom software, some of which are very informal and some of which are extremely formal, and choose between them for the audiences I'm talking to. In small meetings and large ones, those are different, partly because the software actually makes a strong difference between them. Small meetings for a nonprofit board that you work with, or talking to your parents, or planning a birthday party for your niece and nephew, can be very casual and relaxed. And the more people that are involved and the more important the information is, the larger the meeting seems to get and the more functions it will use in Zoom. Chat manners. We always have a problem with chat because Zoom provides a Q&A channel that actually can be monitored by a third party, as we're doing today. And if you put your questions in the chat instead of in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see on your screens 2 buttons, one that is marked as for chat and the other for Q&A. So if you have a question for the presenter or for part of the discussion that's going on around the content, it needs to be in the Q&A where it can actually get picked up and monitored. Bandwidth politesse. When to shut off your video and display only your static image. It's interesting that we are doing video conferencing and whatnot, very much like early versions of Star Trek imagined it nowadays. And a lot of times we don't need to see everybody's faces at once, especially in the larger meetings. So for that, you have a view function in Zoom that lets you shut off all of the stuff except what's on your screen. And your host also has controls of that as well. When you display only your static image on the screen, that actually cuts the bandwidth for the session down significantly. So if you have 30 or 40 people all sending live video, whether anybody's looking at it or not, that actually slows down the computers and burns up a whole bunch of electricity behind the scenes. You can also change your screen name to suit the meeting. There are meetings where your host will ask you to put your preferred pronouns in your screen name and your location. So you can actually change how your name appears on the screen to include those in every Zoom session. You can share your screen and video when you're in a discussion, but if you're not in a discussion, just use your static photo only with your name, whatever format you have that in. And of course, in Zoom, we always want to avoid negativity because we're not face to face. We always try to offer a possible resolution when you raise an issue and use it as an opportunity for everyone to participate. We've had Zoom sessions over the last few years where there were people who dominated the conversation with their complaints about situation, technology, whatever was going on for them. And that creates a bit of havoc for the host who doesn't want to be rude enough to cut them off, but at the same time has an agenda to get through. Okay, so now we're into the scary stuff, which is interference and impedance. These two things refer to the stuff around you that will interfere with your Zoom reception. Some of it you can do things about, some of it you can't. Heavy internet traffic is happening outside of your bailiwick and usually outside of your host's bailiwick. So if you're having a meeting at a peak period on a Wednesday, when everybody in the world, Wednesday afternoons, everybody in the world seems to want to have a meeting about something, you will run into some little bits of lag time, not too much, but some, because of the internet traffic. If somebody else on your home network is running a TV show, watching a movie, or doing large file downloads, that can also cause problems for your device, and we'll see why in a few minutes. Sometimes, if you live right underneath a cell phone tower, the signal from the tower as the antennas scan will disrupt the transmission that you're receiving. This is actually easy to solve, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Disruptive weather or ambient noise can be a problem. I was having a meeting with somebody in Tokyo a few weeks ago, and they had a 6.2 earthquake happen, and it actually was quite dramatic to watch on Zoom, and they actually managed to stay connected all the way through the earthquake, but you could see that their office tower was actually moving around them, and everybody was quite amazed that the Zoom session actually held up. Large appliances in your workplace or your home, and some small ones, and their antennas or their electrical motors and whatnot turning on and off. Things like air conditioners, refrigerators and freezers, which are notorious for messing things up if you're trying to have a meeting in a restaurant space. They tend to mess up your reception quite a bit, especially if you're using the Wi-Fi in that location. And thick walls or long distances, distances that are 30 feet or 9 meters away from your Wi-Fi antenna, actually will also be subject to interference. Thick walls, usually Wi-Fi signals can't get through concrete. Most of the time, they do okay with just drywall and studs, but a lot of places now are actually built with much heavier walls than they used to be. So sometimes that makes a mess of things. So we're going to have a brief history and overview of the home network then and now. And this is going to start with the basics, so please bear with me if you know all this already. Data networks are just like water networks. Once you take the water out of the open sea, you're dealing with plumbing. And once you come off of the World Wide Web and into your building or your home, you're actually dealing with pipes that manage your data transmissions. The internet and the plumbing for it actually looks really complicated, but it's mostly just big pipes feeding smaller pipes and bits and pieces of information moving around. Just happen to be a lot of pipes and some surprisingly large pipes. This one is not an actual fiber optic pipe that is running through the Atlantic Ocean, but it's an artificial intelligence representation of same. And fiber optic cable running underneath the oceans is, and up onto land and through land, is the way that 90% of the long distance data gets around on the internet. It's strikingly fast. It's strikingly accurate. And the problem is always at the connection points or somebody crashing a large ship or something into the pipe. Most often what happens with this gigantic fiber optic pipe is that when it gets on land, it gets buried, and construction crews come along to do something, like the construction crew that was going to do things in our yard today, and nobody tells them there's a fiber optic cable 6 feet in from the side of the road. So they go to work and they dig out the hole, and oops, there was a fiber optic cable there, and the backhoe picked up the casing and broke it, and that took out the entire neighborhood's network. That happens not nearly as often as it did back in the 2000s. 2005 to 2010, that was a fairly regular occurrence. Now it's not, because construction crews are much wiser now and much less inclined to argue with anybody about whether or not they did in the internet. So when it gets to your house, it goes from that gigantic cable across the ocean into a smaller fiber optic cable that runs through your city or town and goes to your nearby cell tower or your nearby communications tower. And from there, it actually has city cables and telecom company cables that run off of the mains buried under your street and comes into your house. And it's interesting what's happened in the last 20 years to people's houses. In the year 2000 or thereabouts, between 2000 and 2005, most people had a laptop and a desktop computer, or maybe a cell phone and a printer in their house. And the router in the top right-hand corner here connected to the cable coming in from out on the street, connected to an internal household router, and the household router connected pipes to all of those devices except the cell phone. That worked very well, except that people eventually decided to get more devices. And when they got more devices, they got a lot more cables. And nobody wants to live like they're in a wiring closet. So the next thing that happened was everybody said, oh, well, we don't have to have wires running everywhere. We can actually put in one of these things, an access point, a booster, or an adapter, okay, that connects to the router, and it just sends radio signals around inside the house. And what you ended up with then was you ended up with your big bandwidth devices like your computer and your printer still actually using cables, and everything else went on to the Wi-Fi. And that worked really well from 2010 to 2015. Okay, and then in 2015 or thereabouts, sometime around then, we ended up getting digital TV, and we ended up getting digital entertainment systems. So we added those to the Wi-Fi network because we still don't like the cables much. There is usually one cable that runs from the router to the TV, or that runs from a switch box to the TV, because you can actually have another box in here that goes to the router and actually provides individual pipes for many more things in a much neater way than just having a million cables running everywhere. However, it started to get a little bit crowded. All of these things were doing Wi-Fi, and everybody loved their Wi-Fi mouse. Everybody loved their Wi-Fi laptop. They loved being able to move the computer to dust it without having to worry about pulling a cable out. The iPads roamed, and Galaxy tablets roamed all over the place in the house, and picked up signals and used signals. And it all started to get quite interesting as far as radio signals within the house. So what happened was that all of these devices that have Wi-Fi actually are using thin air as their conduit to get to this access point in your house. Instead of using a cabled pipe, they're actually all broadcasting at the same time. And as you can see, the access point is sitting here collecting all the radio signals if they're not stepping on each other. Okay, and the cell phone and the iPad tend to wander around a lot, and the laptops, and it's laptops plural now, not laptop singular in most households. All of those are actually looking for radio signal space to communicate with this booster. This booster, in turn, actually has to manage all of those pieces of information and talk to the router and talk to the internet. And this single pipe ends up handling an awful lot of information. And of course, you start to get lag, you start to get interference, you start to get places in your house where your cell phone or your iPad drops out. And if you're running around on Zoom, you end up with your laptop and your computer lagging and doing stuff, all because they're fighting with each other here When they actually make it to the access point, they're then fighting for space in this single pipe to get back to the router and get out to the internet. So what you end up with is you end up with a situation where you have lots of Wi-Fi interference points within your house, and you end up having to do things like turn off the stereo and ask around in the family to find out who's planning on actually streaming a movie while you're running a meeting in the office. And most people end up having arguments over bandwidth and Wi-Fi access in the house. So what you do to do that is you actually put in some temporary cables that don't have to be connected to your computer, your laptop, or your printer all the time. You can use them on Wi-Fi when the traffic is low. Okay. You can use the Wi-Fi when the traffic is low. And then when you absolutely have a critical meeting, you just pick up the end of this cable and plug it back into the back of your computer or into your laptop. And away you go. And suddenly you find out that almost all of your lag time has disappeared. All these other devices are fighting for access through this point, and your computer with your Zoom session on it is not. Your printer is actually wired to the router as well, and it is capable of accepting jobs from Wi-Fi or from cable or from both all at the same time and manage them quite nicely. So if you split the pipe up a bit, that helps a huge amount in getting rid of problems. Okay, this is a really techie bit just to explain some of the stuff you're seeing on the diagram there. And basically the things that you want to remember is that Wi-Fi is a thin air single pipe medium with limited range. It's only good for about 35 feet tops, sometimes only 20 feet if you have thick walls to get through or two walls to get through. And it has limited carrying capacity, i.e. it can only take so many signals at once. For heavy data jobs like a Zoom meeting with lots of video and audio, what you want to do is split that load and use the most robust pipes for the heaviest work. And the heaviest work in terms of internet connections and Zoom is always video and audio. Straight text or even heavily formatted text is about 1/8 of the size of a single bit of video and audio combined data. So so you've actually reduced the problem a whole bunch if all of your video and audio are going down cables instead of going through that Wi-Fi. On your device, a lot of the stuff that happens to you with Zoom happens because you've got apps running in the background. You've got your computer's wallpaper or your laptop's wallpaper. You've got your operating system running. If you're me, you've got like 32 open browser windows, some of which you can't find. And if you're like me, you're also running Google Chrome, which is a huge bandwidth hog. You may have disk space issues. If you don't remove old files from your computer, your disk space on your computer shrinks. And the more the empty space shrinks, the slower your computer actually goes because it doesn't have enough room to work. It has to figuratively stop and search through all the paper it's got in order to find what it's looking for. Backup is your friend. I have made my peace with backup, and I now have an automated backup system for my computer, simply for that reason, because I can actually get stuff backed up. I feel safe enough taking it off my computer now because I know I can get it back anytime. Phones and tablets as devices give you problems with viewing size, screen glare, okay, and your comfort is your colleague's comfort on Zoom. So if you can actually see what they're displaying on the screen on a decent sized screen, and you have your laptop positioned so that the beautiful sunset outside is not cooking the screen, that will make life easier for all of you. On phones and tablets, it's notorious that apps are running in the background to a much greater degree. I know that on my phone, I put my apps on and I consistently forget to shut them off. And so I've gotten in the habit finally, after 25 years of using cell phones, I finally gotten in the habit of integrating into my bedtime routine a 5-minute session with my phone to shut off all of the stuff that's sitting there running in the background and waiting for me to come back to it, and starting fresh in the morning. Hard habit to develop. On iPhones and tablets in particular, you're going to have some signal drops, lags, and freezes. Those are caused partly by high traffic times of day on the internet. Lightning storms will disrupt them. Passing signal vehicles, communications vans and things like that are checking out the internet connections on the street or whatever can sometimes mess you up. And there are telecoms outages that happen from time to time and disrupt everything. I don't know how many people remember the internet going down a year ago for most of 24 hours because of a single switch problem. And it went across the country and basically stopped all the banking and so on and so forth. There are now redundancies built in for that, but those will still happen from time to time. Of course, if you're in a forest fire or in a flood, the time when you want everything to be accessible to you on your cell phone is the time, of course, when that connection is threatened. So anyway, that was most of the scary technical stuff. Glad that's out of the way. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to do things in Zoom, how to mute yourself and turn off your mic, how to turn on and off your video, how to change your static image, how to change your background, how to change your display, chat, and Q&A windows, how to find them and do them, how to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting to request a turn to speak, the things to include in your screen name and how to change that, how to change your screen, throw documents on there, how to share it, and how to share a video or music file. So for microphones, usually the biggest problem with microphones is actually making sure they're on and making sure that you've got the right one. My computer has 2 different microphones. One is embedded in my camera and one is embedded in the computer itself. So that means that when I go in here to my audio button and click this little up arrow, it will offer me all of those different microphones. And if I was messing around with a composer or musician of any sort while I was doing a project, then I might actually have a couple of other professional microphones for radio stations and whatnot in the mix as well. Most of the time, when you click on your audio up arrow here, it will show you all of those and it will let you choose the ones you want. This one is showing you there are 2 here Okay, there's a microphone array, which is attached to my webcam, and there's a system microphone, which is built into my computer. It will also let you choose the speakers. Okay, I have external speakers and I have internal speakers on my computer and laptop. My dad was kind enough to buy me real wonderful stereo speakers for my computer, because I was always complaining about how tinny the laptops and whatnot went. So now I have the luxury of really great stereo sound. My dad was a real stereo nut, so he got the best. You can actually, if you click that little up arrow beside your audio, test your speaker and microphone and get a report back from your computer about which ones are working and which ones aren't. And if you happen to have a smartphone handy that is doing stuff, what you need to do with that, if you decide to switch to phone audio, you need to actually place it several feet away from your computer, because you will get a feedback loop from the phone's audio and speakers interfering with your sound on your computer. Your audio settings are a whole different kettle of fish. Most of the time, you won't need to mess with those. I follow a firm practice of not messing with those much unless something is really wrong and I have to phone tech support to figure out why a new microphone isn't working or something. And that's the only time I get in there, is because they give me information about stuff and tell me to go check this and check that. And I get in there. I am not a broadcaster, so I'm not up on all of the little finicky bits under audio settings. If you, sorry, I'm going to back up here for a second. If you want to find out if your device is actually working, you look at these two little icons down here in the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen. And if they are both white without a red cross through them, or a circle with a red cross through it, that means they're both active at the moment. Normally, what you want to do is shut them off if you're not actually involved in a discussion. And the way you shut them off is you just go and you right click on the audio icon, and it will give you a little flyout that says mute my audio, and Alt A. If you're comfortable using Alt and Control commands, Alt A will actually allow you, without even having to click on this little icon down here, Alt A will actually shut it off for you instantly and put a little red cross over top of your item down here to let you know your audio is turned off. Same thing happens with the video. Okay, if you have your video turned on, it will show up as white down in this corner here. If you right click on your video, okay, or roll your mouse over top, it will offer to stop it for you, and all you have to do, sorry, it's not right click, it's left click. Okay, so left click turns it off, left click turns it back on. All right, once you've turned both of them off, you will see that your screen name, this little item here, is your screen name. It identifies who you are to the rest of your compadres in the meeting or your audience. It will show up with a little red icon on it as well. That tells the host of your meeting that, in fact, if they address a question to you, they should give you a couple of minutes to locate these little items, get back over here, and turn on your audio and video so you can answer them. The way to do it is you just roll your mouse over it. When the flag pops out, you left click with the mouse. When you've got it red and you need to talk to somebody, you just roll your mouse over it and you click on the little red bar, and it turns the audio or video back on and lets you carry on. Okay, if you want to actually change your screen name, because a lot of times your host will ask you to include your location, your pronouns, the territory that you're operating from, things like that, okay, or your title if you're on a panel, okay. So you just roll your mouse over top of your name and you left click on your name and this rename box pops up. You can, in a meeting, type in a different name. So if you're using John Doe's computer, but it's you and you've just borrowed the computer, it will show up here as John Doe's computer. But you just left click on that name. This little box will pop up and you can type in your own name saying, this is Leah on John's computer, if you want. Click the change button and it actually changes this name from Leah Murray Laptop to Leah Murray in Surrey. Okay, sharing is usually what messes people up the most. Okay, if you're in a casual meeting, at the very bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll find your controls bar here. And you'll have a participants thing, you'll have a chat thing. If in this meeting, you will also have a Q&A icon here. You'll have a react button. You'll have a share button. You will not usually have host tools unless you're the one who arranged the meeting. If you are the one who arranged the meeting, this allows you to mute people who have a lot of background noise going on, or if they have a sudden interruption of an earthquake, for example, you can mute them. There's an AI companion now in Zoom. I haven't tried that out much, been too busy over the summer, but when things quiet down late in the fall and it's pouring rain outside, I'm probably going to get in there and mess with that. And Zoom provides a whole whack of really neat little apps for doing stuff in meetings, things like whiteboards and shared whiteboards and ways to connect to this, that, and the other thing. And of course, there's this more button, which also gives you a huge amount of stuff to explore. The ones you're going to use the most are going to be the chat, the react, and your audio and video controls. The rest of them are wonderful toys, but they don't need to be on all the time. When you find your Zoom screen and you go to share, you click on this green share button. When you get there, you will get a little menu that will allow you to pick which kind of sharing you want to do. And once you've clicked it, you may get, as I did earlier, a message that looks like this that says sharing is not turned on. Your host isn't allowing anybody to share right now. So then what you do is you say, oh, excuse me, Bob, could you turn on the sharing? Or if there is a third person like we have today who's actually running the tech in the background, usually they're the ones who are going to actually turn on the sharing for the host when they do it. You'll then get a message back from your host, either spoken or in the chat or typed on the screen, telling you to try again. You do so, and you should get a screen next that looks like this. Okay, if the sharing is turned on, you'll see that you have a whole bunch of possible screens popping up in here. I always just choose this one in the top left corner because it actually gives me access to everything on my computer without interfering too much with anybody who's looking. Sometimes, like today, I will have my presentation sitting in one of these application windows. And I will, instead of going to here and navigating to the presentation using my controls, I'll just click on this and go straight to it. Most times I'll use this though, because my controls for my computer are much more familiar than the Zoom controls that appear in these windows. Once you've chosen which window, you can either just click on it, okay, or you can just choose share. An interesting point about Zoom is that if you're going to share video and audio aside from your own voice, it won't work unless you tell it that you're going to share sound and optimize for the video sharing. If you just go here and share, you actually won't be able to play a video and play the sound for a video at the same time unless you've checked this button as well. This messes people up, and really it can't be set to a default, to be on as a default that I know of. And Zoom says that's for a very good reason. And they're probably right. They have more experience with it than I do. So if you're trying to share a screen and part of it includes background music or video or something, then you want to actually check out these options here and make sure that these two are checked off. Okay, you can actually use this little layout and options button down here. It gives you a menu to describe what your screen is going to look like. If I just click this and double click it, this is what I'll see for my layout. However, I can actually change how my layouts look with these buttons, or I can do it by menu with this button. Okay, when you actually go to share your screen, you will find that, and this is a screenshot of one of my recent share screen attempts. Okay, so the first thing I did when I got onto my share screen was selected a window or an application, clicked on the application window. Okay, the next thing I do automatically is I go and look at this and I say, okay, I want one of these to be showing up here instead of the standard one. And I also want one of these wallpapers to show up in the background for this presentation, because these are nice bland wallpapers that won't distract anybody. Last, I'll check these guys. And then once I've hit that one, check this, checked whether I've got the right background, made sure my buttons are clicked, I hit share down here at the bottom. And bingo, I start to share. Once I've started sharing, I get something like this, whatever item I had on the screen that I wanted to share with people. And I also get this toolbar up here that actually allows you, as you're sharing, to control things in Zoom around the share. Now, the tricky bit about this is that if you're doing stuff on this screen, waving your mouse around and whatnot, this darn bar sometimes will disappear. And all you'll see left is this. The reason it does that is to conserve bandwidth and to allow you to use your screen space properly. This will allow you to turn on and off your audio while you're sharing the screen. It will allow you to access the chat while you're sharing the screen. It will allow you to see the participants. Okay, I'm looking at mine on my shared screen right now here in addition to this picture, and mine says there are 8 items in the chat. Under more on mine, In the Q&A, there are 11 items. When I decide to stop sharing, I just have to hit the little red button here, and it takes my screen away and puts us back to the host's screen. This red and yellow or red and green bar and this border around your screen, and this will be around your screen all the time that you're sharing, are your indicators that you're actually still sharing your desktop with the meeting. Okay, once you hit stop share, this bar disappears and it goes away. Sometimes if you're sharing and you're working on an application here, like this image didn't have text on it, didn't have annotations on it, but I can actually, on my shared screen, I can actually turn on something called the annotations. And once I turn on the annotations, I can actually write on the screen at the same time if the host has not disabled that. Once you're out of share, okay, you're back to having your bottom bar only, and your green border around your screen disappears as well. So this control bar across the bottom allows you to do a whole bunch of things. It allows you to display this participants list so you can see how many people are in the meeting. Mine actually right now says that there are 61 people here. Welcome, everybody. It allows you to look at the chat just by going and clicking on this button. It will pop up the chat to the side, or you can click on this little up arrow and it will give you some options around displaying the chat. Your react button, again, we know that it actually allows you to raise your hand, lower your hand, raise your hand and ring a little bell so that your host knows that you have a question that you want to insert into the discussion. And of course, your Share AI companion and all your apps are there again. Okay. Mine also, because I'm doing this on my laptop and not on a projector and a screen, mine also is displaying right now a remote control. So if there's a remote for the projector and the laptop to move through the slides, I can click on that and activate my remote control. The participants list window actually lets you check out who's there and details that they may have shared about themselves, and it will also give you a handy dandy little indicator beside their name as to whether or not their video and their microphone is on. So if you have this pop up and you're in a discussion and somebody's microphone's gone red, then you know that either their speaker has gone dead or they've got their microphone muted. And so you generally would pop this up and say, okay, Michael, I'm wondering about this thing. Could you unmute yourself and give us a little report about that? If you see that the participant list has a red microphone there. If it has a red mark on the video, generally that's not such a much. It just means they have their video shut off and are not willing to spend the bandwidth to have video and audio going for whatever reason there. So unless they're a panel speaker or your presenter, you don't worry too much about the video button. This participants list is mostly used by the host and the tech support person who's doing Cody's job today to manage how people are able to interact in the meeting. Most of meeting participants or workshop participants won't need to worry about it too much. You can, if you're the host, you have these two buttons down here called mute and mute all. Okay, if you have a disaster like the earthquake that hit and shook everything and made all kinds of roaring, in that case, the host had this up and he just went click mute all and muted everybody's mics all at once. And so they didn't end up getting a whole bunch of noise bouncing around for everybody around the earthquake that was happening. You can also, as the host, mute somebody as an individual. For instance, if the dog starts barking frantically at something that's going on in the background, the host or the tech person can come in here, find this, select the name, and click mute to get rid of the background noise. The text chat and Q&A windows are similar in appearance, but function differently. Okay, chat is used to share things with all of the attendees at once, links to websites, files, or documents they might need for reference, non-destructive side conversations and things like that. So you can be in here and you can choose to chat with the entire meeting or with just individuals within the meeting down at the bottom here. Okay, and you can choose to, what happens very often in the Canadian Artist Network meetings is I will be in the meeting and I'll see an artist that I know from back in Ontario, haven't seen them for a couple of years. So I'll pop in here and use these controls to select that person and just send them a chat message saying, hi, how are you doing? Haven't seen you for ages. We should catch up. Okay, it doesn't actually disrupt the flow of the meeting. It goes straight to them. Nobody else in the meeting can see it. So you can have chatter going back and forth there that isn't disrupting the main flow of the meeting. Q&A is used much more formally for large presentation events and actually presents a whole bunch more options for the helper host who's monitoring the activity there and feeding the queries to the presenter or the host. If you have to do this job for somebody at some point, you may want to find a friend who's done this before and get them to introduce you to using that Q&A thing. Most of us are just going to use the chat 90% of the time and not use the Q&A. How to react to things going on in the meeting. That's where your react button comes in. You can wave at people in the meeting. You can applaud when somebody says something, and it puts a little emoticon or moving GIF, moving image on the screen showing your applause. You can raise your hand for a chance to speak using the react button. And raising your hand simply puts a little hand symbol up, and if you want you can wave it, and it also gives you the option of playing a sound for the host at the same time when you raise your hand. Okay, unlike this slide, those react items are quite lively and fun to play with, and there's a whole host of emojis and little moving things in there, and little hats you can put on and stuff like that. If you can start a Zoom meeting on your own at home, just start the Zoom meeting and go play with these controls. Play with your react button down at the bottom of your screen here in Zoom. These are likely to give you some fun for at least half an hour. and that is the playtime recess part of the training. If we have 10 minutes to spare, which according to my clock, we don't today, we could take a break now so you could poke around there. I encourage you to do that right after this meeting if you have the time, or to just start up your Zoom sometime when it's quiet and poke those things just to see what they do. You can also, on your Zoom bar, mess about with an AI meeting companion. It's, as I said earlier, quite new, and I haven't had a chance to play with it, so I'm just pointing it out today. And your app button under the next button to the AI meeting companion can be your homework or another intermediate to advanced class some other time. And speaking of intermediate and advanced classes, one of the things you'll find is that you will actually be able to, in a meeting, go to your Zoom screen by using the buttons at the bottom of your screen below your Zoom controls, and actually change your settings for your own Zoom setup, or do things using the Zoom interface for a while as well. Okay, what you do is find it in your bottom bar. This is a standard Windows bottom bar. Your Apples and Macs have the same sort of thing with different looking icons, probably prettier ones on it. Okay, so you can actually choose apps here, and if you get out of your Zoom window and can't find it again, this toolbar at the bottom of your screen is your best bet. So you just roll along it and it will pop up things. You'll also notice that in both Apple's and Windows machines, you have indicators as to which items are actually active and running at the moment. On a PC, they're just this little oblong pills underneath the icon. On a Mac, on some of the Macs, it was actually a highlighted little border around it. Okay, and anything you saw like that will tell you on your toolbar that, in fact, that application is running in your background. And you can just click into it instantly and click away again. Once you've clicked on your Zoom button, it will take you back usually to this Zoom screen here. And it will pop it up over top of whatever else you're looking at. Your Zoom screen from the app actually has a toolbar across the top with a whole bunch of things on it that you can use. Mostly what you will want is the home button, okay? Because in your Zoom main screen, you can create a new meeting. You can join an existing meeting. You can schedule a bigger meeting, or you can share your screen. So you have two ways of sharing your screen. You can actually go to your toolbar at the top of your Zoom window and share it from there, or unshare it from there, or you can come straight back into your Zoom interface and control it from here exactly the same way. The new meeting one is usually a quick and dirty meeting, like one of my artist friends is working on something in Photoshop, can't figure out why it's not doing what she expected it to do. She phones me up, says, "Can you help me with this?" I say, "Sure, let's get on Zoom so I can see what's going on." So we get on Zoom, she shares her screen, and I say, "Oh, can you click on that? Can you show me what's going on?" She clicks on it, shows me what's going on, and then I go, "Oh, okay." And I've done all that just with this new meeting and sent her the link, and bang, we're on there. I can text her the link from my phone, or I can send it from email. Schedule is a bit more formal, so it has a whole bunch more options. It has wax of things to help you add agendas and include documents, include videos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mostly when individuals are using Zoom, they do the new meeting thing. Okay, and that once you click on that, that pops this screen up, okay, that lets you know what you can do here. And you can set your date and time for start and finish in there. You can make it a repeating meeting. Okay, and if you just click on the little arrows to the right, these things will pop down a calendar in the case of the date, or options for repeating in the case of that one. This little arrow will let you choose a time zone. Okay, this time will actually allow you a rolling selection of times to use. You can add attachments. Once you click on the plus sign here, you can just attach by following a simple set of prompts, a meeting agenda or a document that people need. You can also go in here, attendees, type in the email address or the name of the person if you happen to be on a corporate network, their network name. You can type that in here, and when you do that, it will pop down a selection box that you can click on for their email address or name, and it will add them to the list. And you can just repeat that again and again and again until you get your 5 people or your 10 people, whatever it is. You can export this meeting to your external calendar. Okay, your Outlook calendar or your Google calendar are the 2 most common ones, or your Apple calendar. Those 3 are almost always right available in here. And you just click on the little arrow down and choose the calendar that you want and export it to your own calendar. You can choose meeting options. Okay. You can identify your meeting ID specifically by adding it yourself, by choosing this, or by generating it automatically. I'm lazy, so I just generate them automatically. And it will automatically put meeting security passcodes in for all of your meetings as well. So people can't Zoom bomb you the way they used to be able to do it anymore. Okay. There's a new version of Zoom out, and it's in beta, so you get the choice of whether you want to mess with it or not. Sometimes I'll do that, sometimes I won't. It just depends on how busy I am at this particular time. Once I've set up my meeting with all of these contents, I click on send, and it will pop the next little bit up, which is this. Once I say once I've said I've scheduled it, it will pop this up and let me see exactly what I've sent out to people as an email to let them know what it is. It will also let me copy this to the clipboard so that I can paste it into my iPhone's chat app on my computer and send it to people. Or I can just paste it into and pop this up during a meeting and copy it out and send it off to somebody that I want to join us partway through and say, here's the link, please come and join us for 10 minutes. We need to ask your opinion about this, that, or the other thing. So that was pretty much all of the scary technical stuff about Zoom. There are a few links that I will put at the handout when I actually send the handout off to Scott later today. for posting on the website. And there, one of the links is the Zoom quick tutorials page, which will give you little bite-sized lessons on all of this stuff. You just go to the page and it's nicely laid out like posts on a blog, and you just scan down, look for what you want, or you can use the search bar to do that. Okay, so I think we're probably about ready for any questions.
And not
stop sharing.
surprisingly, Leo, we have a few questions.
I
Although
wouldn't be surprised at all.
some of them were posted before you covered everything, so I think you may have covered them. The first one from Elizabeth: if the moderator asks to see your face, though you suggest to turn off your video, can you tell us how to get to that? And I think you covered that. Elizabeth, if you need further information, please post another question. But the second thing she asked, and I don't think you covered it, is how to change a background.
Ah, yes. Okay, so your background, if you look at the screen you're watching right now, and you look down at the bottom bar, you'll see your video item there. Okay. If you go and click on the little arrow to the right of that, it'll pop up a menu, and then you can click on video settings, and it will actually open up an entire submenu on your screen showing you the settings for your video, your audio, how to share your screen, team chat, all your Zoom apps and whatnot. The one that you're asking about is the one called Background and Effects. And if you click on Background and Effects on the left-hand side of your settings menu, you will find in there how to deal with virtual backgrounds. As you can see, I have one running behind me. It's actually just Nest running over the top of Mount Seymour up here across the river. And I got a video of it one day when I was up that way, and just saved the video on my computer and stuck it on, went into my backgrounds and effects and went to virtual backgrounds. And in here, it actually allows you to choose what background you want and how you want it to be displayed. It will also give you two options there for a green screen or to mirror your video. And if you mirror your video and you have writing on it, the writing will appear to your audience backwards. So be careful with that one. The green screen, I use a green screen because I live in a minuscule little one-bedroom apartment. Okay, so I just have a green drape that goes behind me, and my Zoom actually treats that as if I am working in front of a professional television green screen and produces a seamless background instead of having people walking by behind me. Once you get 6 feet from 6 feet behind my screen, you're behind my chair and you're tangled up in my green screen. So you're sort of a nice way to protect unexpected intrusions. And usually my cat doesn't like to sit that high up, so he sits on my lap and you can't see him anyway.
Question.
That answer the question?
It did as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully it did as far as Elizabeth's concerned. Another question. This is really quite technical, I think. The image displayed on the page notifying attendees the webinar was about to start, the waiting room, was lovely. Well, thank you. I'm glad you liked that. How can we post images on the Zoom page? That's really something that you do if you are actually going to create a webinar or a meeting And there are ways to do that. And I don't think we really have time to go into it because not too many people will need to encounter that.
Yeah.
Question.
I didn't cover that on purpose because hosting a meeting involves all of that, and that does get quite convoluted, and we didn't have enough time to cover all of that today.
Right.
If you're interested, maybe in January, February timeframe, we can do another webinar on how to host meetings in Zoom and, follow it on that way.
That's worth talking about, Leah. Thank you. From Carol Morrison, in Nova Scotia, I don't think any fiber optic cables are buried. Does this make weather interference more of a problem?
Not for fiber optic cables. Fiber optic cables are actually strikingly robust, which is why they use them under the ocean. Sharks have been known to try to mess with fiber optic cables because they can feel the electrical and electronic vibrations coming off them. And orcas actually get curious about those the first time they see one in their environment as well. Dolphins also do, and it apparently tickles because all of these marine creatures will go and hang around there and play near them because they're curious. But yes, having them above ground isn't such a bad thing, and that that emission that it makes is not dangerous. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't have any more effect than your own Wi-Fi. Most of the time we can't feel it and we don't notice it. And so what they do is when they have it above ground, they put it in something called a conduit. And that basically looks like a gigantic culvert. And they run the fiber optic through that, or they put it in one of those big heavy wires that string along the telephone poles. And the casing on that is heavily shielded, as is the casing for your in-home internet cables, which is why your in-home Wi-Fi doesn't mess with your transmission if you have a local area network cable between your computer and your router. All of that Wi-Fi bouncing around just gets shut out by the shielding on the cable. So.
Question about how to create a poll in Zoom. I think that might be best left for the how to host a meeting webinar at another time. A question about how does simultaneous heavy Wi-Fi used by others in a condo influence reception? I think you pretty much covered that, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Badly. It affects it badly.
Badly. Yes. Simple answer. Where do you find select a microphone? Yeah. Where do you find select a microphone? You answered that one. It's in the mic. It's part of the pop-up from the microphone button.
Bottom left corner of your screen. Yeah.
Right. Someone's saying they don't see the AI companion. How do you get it? And I, quite frankly, don't have it on mine either. So.
Oh, okay. That may be simply the fact that I have a pro version of Zoom, and every time Zoom has a beta version of new stuff that they want people to try out, they send it to everybody who has a pro version and pop it up. So, and what they're expecting us to do is go play with it, figure out how it works ahead of everybody else, complain to them about the stuff that doesn't work. So they fix it and then they put it in general release. It's kind of the beta version. So if you don't see it, it's A, because you don't have a pro version, or B, because you've decided to have that shut off in your settings somewhere, not to pop that up for you.
But it will show up eventually.
It will show up eventually. What will normally happen to anybody who does not have a pro version is you will get an email that says, hey, we're going to upgrade. Here's what you can expect, and here's a web page about all of it. Okay, so when it shows up, suddenly things will change. And of course, you're going, why didn't they tell me they were going to change this? Well, they did sort of.
We've got a few more questions and we're rapidly running out of time. Can you explain how to save the chat?
Yes. Saving the chat is a big deal these days. We've had it first, saving the chat has to be permitted by your host. Okay. And for about 6 months, we had a problem with it in that the save chat function stopped working. And Zoom was tearing their hair out trying to get that fixed. They're normally, if you go into your chat button on the side of your screen there and click it open, what you will see is you'll see the chat pull down on the right-hand side of your screen, and you will see at the very bottom, you'll see your type message space and your two-person, and you'll see a little button for adding a document. Okay, and you'll see a little button for adding an emoji to the chat. And then you'll see 3 little dots to the right of that where it says more. And if you click on the 3 little dots, the item that pops up is called Save Chat. If you click on Save Chat, it will then actually save that and put out the bottom of, just above where you clicked on it, it will say in your chat message, show in folder. Okay, and when you click on show in folder, it will open your file manager or your file finder for you and just leave it sitting in the background on your screen so you can actually go and copy the chat or parts of the chat or click on, you know, links or whatever you want to do with it.
What is a PoE injector?
Oh, a PoE injector is basically the silly little adapter that goes between your wireless antenna and your router. The technical name for it is a point of entry adapter. Okay, don't ask me why they called it an injector. I have a suspicion somebody let the engineers write the technical manual for that. As a technical writer and a tech communicator, I would never have used that term. I would have just said the adapter for the access point. That's what a PoE injector is. It's just an adapter for them.
Okay. If you send a direct message to someone in Zoom chat, can the host and tech also read it?
No, if you send a direct message, it only shows up in your chat and their chat. Sometimes the tech can read it depending on what's going on. The military doesn't like side chatter. In a meeting, they want to know everything that's going on in the meeting, so they have that turned off. People can't have side chatter in a military meeting. Most high-level government meetings have the same setup. Okay. However, in corporations and in artists' communities, there's all kinds of side chatter going on all the time, and everybody loves it. So.
Indeed. Susan pointed out, and we've had a couple of people point out, that they don't have a react button on their computer. They do have the raise hand button. That's the same thing, isn't it?
It is the same thing. Okay. And you can click on it and it will put this little hand symbol up in the top, and it will also make a little pop thing as well. Okay, so once you've raised your hand, you can actually go down to the same button and click on lower hand, and it will take that away. Okay, your React buttons are coming out in the new one. Sorry, I forgot that I had actually done that. But if you launch your Zoom without a meeting going on, you will suddenly find that you have lots more controls that you don't have when you're in a hosted meeting. Okay, so I encourage you to pop your Zoom up without anybody on the other end and go play. Because A, it's lots of fun, and B, given a coffee and a couple of ginger snaps, it's a great way to spend an hour.
Where's the best place to load Zoom onto a new device? I would
I'm not
imagine
sure.
the Zoom site itself, wouldn't it?
Um,
Like if
I'm
you get a
not
new
sure whether
iPad or
that
something like that.
question refers to the best place to get the Zoom to install, or whether it is referring to, is it better on your iPhone or on your laptop or on your desktop
I think it's more, I have a new iPad.
device?
How do I install it? Where's the best place to go to install it?
Ah, okay. So if you have an iPad or an iPhone, you go to the App Store. Okay, and you go to the Google Play Store if you have a Android. All right. Or a Galaxy, a Samsung Galaxy, you go to the Play Store. Okay, in the Play Store, there's a little magnifying glass that lets you search, and you just type in Zoom there, and it will take you to the place to get Zoom for free. Okay, the free version of Zoom that everybody uses to disconnect. If you're not delivering presentations and stuff, there's not much point in buying the pro version, except that if you're just using the free version, you've got a 45-minute limit on your meeting, which for me was an absolute killer. That I love to talk, as you might have figured out. And, so in 45 minutes is never enough for me in a meeting.
And speaking of which, we've run out of time. And
Oh,
we have a few more questions, but I'm afraid we're just not going to get to them because some of them have asked multiple questions and we could be here for a long time. So sorry about
okay.
that. But
Well, how about if you have questions, I'm going to stuff my email address in the chat. Okay, there it is. It's in the chat. Okay, and if you have questions that have not been answered adequately, shoot me an email. This is my busy season because I'm doing art exhibits and art tours and this and that, because this isn't my day job. This is a hobby, this stuff. But please don't feel free to email me questions and tell me where you got my email address, and I'll answer when I get the
great.
time. Okay.
Thank you, Leah. And thank you for this. This has been wonderful. I learned a few things. So, and I thought I knew Zoom pretty well. So thank you
Yeah,
for everything today.
I learn something new about Zoom every day.
And Leah will be back, by the way, on September 12th at the same time for our next webinar presentation, this one on video production, which is going to be great for those of us who ever own websites and would like to post a short video, or if you're an actor and you're doing self-tapes, how to create videos for social media, that sort of thing. So that's Thursday, September 12th at the same time. And you can sign up for that on our website. So thank you, Leah, again. Thank you, Cody Rooney. Thank you to our series sponsor, TELUS. And mostly thanks to those of you who are here today, because it would be pointless without you. We will be posting a video of this webinar on our website later this week. So what you learned today will come in very handy with the video production webinar, because you're going to need as much bandwidth as possible in order to hear what and see what Leah has to say. Now, all of our webinars, sorry, go ahead, Leah.
Scott, Staples has a sale on in the next couple of days on network cable. So if you decide that you want to buy one for that thing and plug in your device, go ask them for a Cat 6 cable. It's about $65 for 50 feet, which would give you more than enough space, I think, more than enough cable to do it. So
Great. Thank you for that. All of our webinars, by the way, in case you didn't know, including public relations, art and neuroscience, preserving the mind, copyright, social media, artistic legacy preparation, wellness in winter, identity theft and fraud prevention. They are all on our website, and you can view them at any time. And our website, of course, is canartnet.ca. I'll be posting that in just a second or two. So until we meet again, please take care, please be well, and we wish you a creative day. Till next time.